The pallid glow of the moon shone warmly through the skeletal branches above me, illuminating the lonely stretch of highway on which I found myself stranded. The dampness of the late-night air clung to my skin, an echo of the concert I was returning from. A last hurrah, a semblance of normalcy before the world became quiet again. My car, a symbol of my erstwhile freedom, was now a dead piece of metal on the road, devoid of life. The check engine light had flashed on just moments before the engine choked, sputtered, and surrendered to a deathly silence. I was miles from home and surrounded by darkness, save for the wan moon above. In the middle of nowhere, the echo of my high heels on the asphalt was the only sound for miles, punctuating the otherwise pregnant silence. I nervously checked my phone. One bar, just one bar of signal left. I could call a tow truck, I thought, trying to suppress the rising wave of panic that threatened to consume me. I dialed the number, waited, and heard the disconnected tone. Just as I was about to surrender to despair, the sound of a distant engine hummed into my awareness. Hope surged in my chest as I saw the headlights growing brighter in the distance. A small prayer escaped my lips as I waved my hands, hoping to grab the driver's attention. The vehicle slowed, pulling over to the side of the road. It was an old model pickup truck, its faded red paint chipped and rusted in places. Out of it climbed a man, his lanky silhouette etched against the headlights. A chill ran down my spine, not of relief, but of an indefinable fear. The man was oddly dressed for a late-night drive, a faded red flannel shirt, greasy overalls, and boots covered in a mix of mud and what I hoped was red paint. His gaunt face was lined with age, and his eyes, a predatory gleam shone within them. "I reckon you need some help, miss," he said, a toothy grin unfurling on his leathery face. "Yes, thank you," I managed, forcing a grateful smile. He examined my car, whistling lowly under his breath. "I can tie your car to my place. Got all the tools to fix her up," he said, the words hanging heavy in the air. His offer was my only escape, and I felt the grip of terror tightening around me. But trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea, I had little choice. The journey was painfully long. His house was nestled deep in the woods, away from prying eyes. The building loomed in the darkness, its darkened windows like hollowed eyes. He led me inside, and the place was a horror show in itself. The scent of rot hit me first, followed by the sight of taxidermy animals with their glassy eyes scattered around the dimly lit room. The sight of them, still and silent, their lives halted mid-scream, sent a wave of disgust through me. "Sit down. I'll go check on your car," he said, leaving me in that grotesque mausoleum. The fear in me was now palpable, twisting my stomach in knots. My mind was a whirlwind of horrifying possibilities, but I reminded myself I had to survive, and survival meant escape. I made a run for the door, pulling at it with all my might. It was locked. Footsteps behind me made me turn. He was standing there, a wicked grin on his face. His eyes glinted with a perverse delight. Running so soon? In a surge of adrenaline, I flung the nearest thing I could find at him. It was a heavy ashtray, and it hit him square in the face. He staggered, blood running down his face, as I sprinted past him, heading for the garage. I got into the pickup truck, praying the keys were in it. Luck was on my side. The engine roared to life just as I saw him stumbling out of the house, clutching his bleeding face. I floored the gas and drove off, leaving the house of horrors behind. I arrived at the nearest town by dawn. The people there were kind, their faces reflecting the horror of my story. I was safe. I cooperated fully with the authorities, leading them back to the house that was etched permanently into my memory. The tension was palpable when the police, their faces grim and set, surrounded the building. I could only watch, my heart pounding in my chest, as they stormed inside. Moments later, they emerged, dragging him out in handcuffs. The sight of him was as terrifying as ever, even shackled and outnumbered. His eyes met mine, and that wicked grin once again crossed his face. But this time, I didn't cower. I held his gaze, refusing to be the victim any longer. In the end, they found the tools of his horrifying trade, along with my car still parked in the garage. Evidence of his vile deeds was discovered, enough to put him away for life. The chilling news of his arrest made headlines. The man who preyed on stranded motorists was now confined to a cell. His reign of terror finally ended. The oppressive silence of my hotel room hung over me like a shroud. Stale, chilling air prickled the bare skin of my arms, the sole illumination, a halo from the flickering screen of my laptop. I was still coming to terms with my recent dismissal. As a journalist, my tenacious spirit had been my sword and shield, yet it was also my downfall. My critical piece on the corporate giant, Meisler Incorporated, had resulted in their wrath and my subsequent job loss. Since then, my room became my sanctuary, my prison, a graveyard of dead aspirations. My life revolved around job searches, blank Word documents, and cups of cold coffee. One evening, while scouring the net for freelance gigs, an anonymous email popped up. The subject was, "Is this you?" The innocuous question piqued my curiosity. Clicking on it, I was met with a link to a dark web forum. My instincts screamed at me to close it, to delete the email. Yet the mystery tugged at the journalist in me, and curiosity compelled me to click on it. My breath hitched as I stared at the images that loaded on the screen. Pictures of me, high resolution, capturing intimate moments of my life. There I was at the grocery store, hunched over a cart of canned soup and ramen. There I was at the coffee shop, my face illuminated by the cold glow of my laptop. There was even a picture of me brushing my teeth, taken through my hotel room window. The invasion of my privacy was horrifying. My stomach churned with disgust as I scrolled through more photos, each increasingly intimate and invasive. My safe haven, my hotel room, no longer felt secure. Paranoia gnawed at my mind as every creak, every rustle of the wind became a potential intruder. I double, then triple-checked the locks on my doors and windows. The dark corners of my room seemed to seethe with unseen threats. Every shadow morphed into a hideous, leering face. Every mirror seemed to reflect an unseen observer. Days blurred into nights as I obsessively monitored the forum for new posts. I was terrified yet couldn't tear myself away. The idea of contacting the hotel management or the police crossed my mind, but the thought of them not believing me, or worse, blaming me for the situation, kept me silent. One day, a new batch of photos appeared. Photos of me in my room, curled up on the couch, my eyes wide and fearful as I stared at the laptop screen. The perspective of the shot was chilling. It was taken from inside my room. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape from the sinister cage my hotel room had become. But then a thought struck me. If the photos were being taken from inside my room, there had to be clues. I decided to use my journalistic skills to uncover the truth. I began a meticulous examination of my room. I looked for hidden cameras, unusual items, anything that could be out of place. The meticulous scrutiny went on for days, and just when my hope was ebbing away, I noticed a tiny glint from the smoke detector in the ceiling. Taking it down, my hands shaking, I found a tiny camera lens embedded within. A rush of horror, paranoia, and fury coursed through me. But now, at least, I had something concrete, evidence. With the camera in hand, I went to the hotel management and then to the police, my apprehension ebbing away, replaced by a fierce determination. They took me seriously, and within days, the net closed around the perpetrator. A worker from the hotel's maintenance team, who had installed the security system in my room, was apprehended. He'd been selling such photos on the dark web, profiting from the violation of personal lives. The sense of violation took a long time to fade, but the victory was sweet. The sight of him being led away in handcuffs was satisfying. Yet it sent a shiver down my spine to think of the horror I'd lived through, the invisible observer who turned my life into a voyeuristic gallery. As the sun lazily rises over the sleepy suburb of Riverton, the quaint middle school nestled amongst tall oak trees begins to stir with life. Right in the heart of it all is the warm and welcoming classroom of Ms. Eleanor Simmons, a seasoned middle school teacher respected for her empathy and dedication. Each morning, she would arrange her desk with a cherished familiarity, arranging her colorful books and student projects. But on one dreary Monday morning, her usual routine was disrupted by an odd discovery. A small, ragged note slipped under her coffee mug. Her brows furrowed, perplexed, as she unfolded the grimy paper. "Remember what you did. You can't escape your past, Eleanor." A cold shiver ran down her spine, her chest constricting as her eyes darted across the eerily familiar handwriting. She dismissed it as a juvenile prank, yet an uncomfortable silence loomed, clawing its way into her mind. Each day, a new note found its way onto her desk, each more menacing than the last. "Tick-tock, Eleanor. Your past is catching up. The truth will come out." Each message was a jab at her sanity, turning her once safe haven into a place of haunting paranoia. Whispers of fear echoed in the halls, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ominous ticking of the clock on the wall. Her once vibrant classroom felt oppressive. The chalky smell of the blackboard and the coldness of the linoleum floors felt chilling. She reached out to the school authorities, but they were dismissive, insisting it was the work of mischievous students. But Eleanor knew better. The gut-wrenching dread consuming her was far too real. One day, she found herself locked in her classroom during recess. The once melodious laughter and chatter from the schoolyard now sounded like haunting echoes, a symphony of terror. Panic gnawed at her as she tried the door, her hands trembling, slick with perspiration. Suddenly, a note slid under the door, so fresh that the ink was still wet, staining her trembling fingers. "Found you." With a guttural scream, she pounded on the door, her voice swallowed by the thick walls of the classroom. Suddenly, she froze, the hair on the back of her neck prickling as she realized she wasn't alone. A gaunt figure emerged from the shadowy corner of the room, his eyes devoid of warmth, carrying an eerie familiarity that froze her blood. Her heart pounded as she recognized him. It was Jason, a former student who was expelled under mysterious circumstances years ago. The same student whose life she had unintentionally ruined by reporting suspicious behavior that turned out to be unfounded. As the horrifying reality settled in, she stared at him, his cruel smile reflecting the years of resentment and hatred. The years had not been kind to him. His haggard appearance and dark eyes were testament to a life gone wrong. "You remember now, don't you, Eleanor?" he rasped, stepping into the dim light, his cruel smile revealing a maw of decaying teeth. "You remember the life you ruined, the innocence you stole." Eleanor stood paralyzed, the ticking of the classroom clock echoing ominously. The morning light seeped through the blinds, casting grotesque shadows on Jason's distorted face. Summoning all her courage, she spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Jason, I'm sorry for what happened. I made a mistake. It was never my intention to ruin your life." Jason glared at her, his lips curling into a bitter smile. "Sorry won't bring back my lost years, Eleanor." "I know," Eleanor whispered, swallowing the lump in her throat. "But we can start mending things. We can try to correct the past, together." There was a tense silence. Eleanor could hear the ticking clock, the beating of her own heart. She could see the war within Jason, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal. It was a long, grueling minute before Jason's expression softened, the harsh lines of his face easing into something less menacing. Just then, the locked door creaked open as the janitor, having heard Eleanor's screams, came rushing in. Seeing the situation, he quickly dialed 911, and within minutes, the quiet school was swarming with the local police. Jason was taken into custody, and Eleanor was brought out of the classroom. Despite the shocking events, a wave of relief washed over her, knowing that Jason would get the help he needed and that her nightmare was finally over.